For more than 16 centuries, Ethiopia's Orthodox churches have survived empires, foreign invasions, and violent revolutions. They were places of refuge, places of quiet prayer and absolute peace. But today, across the Horn of Africa, those sacred sanctuaries are now becoming violent battlefields. A deadly drone strike has once again left one of Africa's oldest Christian communities mourning its dead. And it has now raised questions about whether the country's Christian communities are becoming casualties of a conflict with no safe havens. Reports confirm that on the 22nd of July, an Ethiopian National Defense Force drone struck the Abbey George's Saint Arsema Unity Monastery. It is located in South Wollo in the Amhara region. The strike reportedly hit during a divine liturgy, and this killing 2 nuns and injured 14 other members of the monastic community. While separate circulating local reports allege up to 8 monastics lost their lives. Now, images circulating online show what appears to be parts of the drone that hit the monastery. The type of drone used has not been officially confirmed. The attack came as government forces reportedly continue operations against the Fano fighters in the Amhara region. Ethiopian government sources have alleged that Fano fighters were using the historical monastery as a shelter. However, church leaders maintain that no Fano fighters were in the monastery at the time of the drone strike, with the attacks only killing nuns, priests, and worshippers. Reports also suggest military operations in the area have relied on electronic signal tracking, including mobile phone locations, to identify suspected targets. This creates a big risk of collateral damage when armed fighters and innocent worshippers share the exact same geographic footprint.
Raising a hand against monastics who have abandoned worldly gains to spend their lives in prayer for national peace, and who possess no means of self-defense, violates divine law and dishonors our history.
Now, the strike has also drawn international condemnation. The World Council of Churches, representing over 500 million Christians worldwide, has called for an immediate, credible, and independent investigation.
The reported attack on a place of worship and the killing and wounding of civilians is deeply disturbing and utterly unacceptable. Religious institutions and civilians must never be targeted or placed in the path of military operations. The World Council of Churches calls for an immediate, credible, transparent, and impartial investigation into this incident, and for those responsible to be held accountable.
But for millions of Ethiopian Christians, this was not an isolated tragedy. They say it is part of a far larger pattern. In the East RC zone of the Oromo regional state, coordinated armed attacks targeting Orthodox Christian communities reportedly erupted in late May and continued into June. Church officials say more than 200 homes were destroyed and over 1,500 people were forced to flee their communities, forcing people to take refuge in a nearby forest. Church leaders say the 101-year-old Teleta Chefa St. Gabriel Church was also reportedly burned to the ground. Following that attack, Ethiopian authorities also reportedly started arresting church officials and clergy who condemned that violence. Federal authorities have not publicly responded to those claims. For the church leaders, the greatest damage cannot be measured in bricks or stone. They say that believers now fear gathering for worship, wondering whether even their holiest places remain safe.
When a place of worship becomes a place of death, believers begin to ask where they can safely gather. Whether the target was armed fighters or not, the people who died were worshipers, priests, and nuns. Many believers are now living with fear, afraid to gather for worship. Innocent people should never pay the price of war.
The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church has stood at the heart of the country's identity for more than 1,600 years. With its roots tracing back to the 4th century, its monasteries are more than places of worship. They are custodians of Africa's Christian heritage, history, and culture. Yet today, this ancient faith is being violently dragged into political and regional wars. Under international humanitarian law, places of worship are afforded special protection. They cannot be targeted unless they are being used for military purposes. Even then, all parties are legally required to take every possible precaution to protect civilians. But for many Ethiopian Christians, those protections now feel increasingly fragile. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church is a bedrock of African history and global heritage. Today, its greatest challenge is not preserving its history, but protecting its people. Because when places of prayer become places of fear, a nation risks losing far more than lives. It risks losing its soul.